Hi, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Rudger. I'm with Keynote, and I'm going to talk to you today about wearables and testing on wearables and ensuring that you can test in a way that ensures that you're going to get high-quality results and be able to deliver a high-quality customer experience. As I mentioned, I'm with Keynote. For those of you who may not be familiar with Keynote, we are one of the leading performance monitoring and quality testing providers in the space, focused really on cloud-based testing and monitoring. And so to start off my presentation, I thought I'd start off on a bit of a light note. Not really. A couple of weeks ago, the three horsemen of the testing apocalypse rode into town, and their names are the Apple Watch, the Apple Watch Sport Edition, the Apple Watch Sport, and the Apple Watch Edition. And although I'm using a little bit of hyperbole here, it's not really the apocalypse, but it is a seminal event that is going to disrupt your quality programs, if not already in the very near future. So, while the idea of a smart watch is not necessarily a new idea, right? It's not a new concept. Just as with the smartphone, when Apple introduced the iPhone, it really changed the game. And so is the case with the Apple Watch. It's going to create a new paradigm for the way in which companies interact digitally with customers, right? It's going to change the way that we engage with our customers through new modes of interaction. And the reason really is because this device, more than the other smartwatch devices that have been entered into the marketplace up to this point, it's truly app-centric. And that's a really important paradigm to consider. As a result, it's going to force extreme pressure on developers, quality professionals, and operations teams as well, supporting the delivery of these new experiences. And so these pressures, they're not going to come purely as a result of the new kind of interfaces that the Apple Watch has introduced. The force touch pressure sensitivity, or the haptic sensor, or the voice commands. It's really going to be more a function of a lot of other challenges that will be disruptive, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. But let's first start by understanding the reasons why today is the day that you really need to begin considering how to approach your program for quality in the context of wearables and the Apple Watch in particular. And it really starts with, it's kind of all about the money, right? If you look at the figures here, the estimates for the total number of smartwatch devices that were shipped last year based on the Android Gear environment, that includes LG, Samsung, Motorola, etc. Total number was for the entire year of 2014, about 720,000 units. In the first weekend that the Apple Watch was released, the estimates are that they sold over 1.2 million devices. That's just within the first weekend. The high estimate for total sales of the Apple Watch within the first year is 20 million devices. And so really, if you aren't appreciating the disruption and the implications that the Apple Watch imposes, then you will really soon. In terms of the overall market and what wearables in general and smartwatches in particular represent, total market estimates based on the introduction of the Apple Watch and the spur of innovation and new device and form factor delivery is going to be at the high end somewhere on the order of 91.6 million by 2018. And that will represent a $9.2 billion market. And if you don't think that the hardware and software companies that are looking at this potential opportunity aren't salivating, then you're not appreciating what the money motivation here is. So the reality is that it's going to be transformative, it's going to be disruptive, and it's coming at you very quickly. And it's all part of the broader trend of what mobile is representing within the marketplace. We have estimates that suggest that worldwide mobile phone penetration will reach 5 billion people by the year 2017. Smartphones, there should be about 2 billion smartphones active worldwide by the end of the year next. And here in the United States, the overall penetration of smartphones is 75%. So really we are living in a mobile-first world, and that has extreme implications for how you manage quality. Building and running apps on the Apple Watch is a function of the new environment, the new wearables environment that Apple developed called WatchKit. And this new operating environment supports these fully functional, independent apps and applications. And even today, although these apps require connection to an iPhone, in the future they are going to be fully independent, where you don't even need to have an iPhone kind of tethered, albeit wirelessly. So the implication, though, in terms of the challenge for you is that even though you or your company, the development organization may not be developing applications specifically for the watch, your developers will be developing functionality that will take advantage of the watch and will take advantage of WatchKit. And so the implications, again, from a testing standpoint are that this device, although it may not necessarily be primary in terms of a destination for application development, it will have an impact on the application development that's already happening today. And another implication here is that in terms of the overall environment, again, regardless of whether or not you're developing applications for the Apple Watch, the iOS environment is changing based on the Apple Watch. And in fact, it's changing at twice the rate that it used to change, again, as a function of this wearable device. iOS 7 had 2 major dot releases. iOS 8 has already had 4 major dot releases. We could have another one here in the near future. That's twice as many releases. And so, again, regardless of whether or not you're thinking about wearables as a program specifically that your company is going to take advantage of, it has an impact on you as a developer in the mobile realm, regardless. And don't think that Google is going to sit here on their laurels and just stand still with Android Wear. They've already introduced an update to the Android Wear operating system or operating environment as well, 5.1. Coincidentally, right around the same time that the Apple Watch was introduced in mid-April. The fact of the matter is that Android will continue to evolve quickly to accommodate the opportunity and to take advantage and to compete for the hearts and the minds of consumers that are adopting wearable environments. These are big challenges, right? They represent massive regression event opportunities. They represent opportunities from a testing standpoint that, again, regardless of whether or not you're in the wearable game, impact you as a mobile developer. So specifically in terms of challenges for wearables, another additional big challenge is that power management will become very important. These devices have very small batteries because of the small form factor. And they're also dependent on another wireless connection point. So again, if you're delivering applications that are connecting over the internet, they have to jump through yet another hoop to be viable on the actual watch device itself. And so functionality and performance begin to blur in this context, where functionality that you want to provide to your end user, to your customer, is going to be so dependent on these other performance-oriented aspects that managing a quality initiative really becomes a quality and performance initiative. The last big challenge is that, in general, designing for the wearable device is the Wild West. And in fact, it's not even really this Wild West. It's more like this Wild West, like with aliens and stuff. There aren't rules. There aren't well-defined conventions. Just as when we entered into the new world of mobile smartphone applications, the notion of certain design conventions didn't really gel and form and emerge until a few years after the initial introduction. And the same will happen with the wearable environment as well. And that represents a challenge. Dan North was just talking about your specification-driven testing, right? What is your expected behavior of the application? Well, when the design conventions are still emerging, it's hard to standardize on what to expect as the appropriate behavior for an application. And so when it comes to testing, that becomes a big challenge. So really, at the end of the day, it's all about the customer experience, and to take advantage of the mobile opportunity, the wearable opportunity in particular, it really takes understanding the implications from a design, quality, and performance perspective. And that's what drives really great customer experience. And so the challenge here, again, for wearables is that the application and the experience is going to be very contextually based. It's going to require an extreme amount of curation, right? And so in addition to making sure that you have the appropriate coverage in terms of your testing and quality, ensuring that the performance of the application is actually extremely high is also critical. In general, in mobility, the factors that we're all having to deal with in ensuring quality and delivering a great customer experience, they have to do with specific changes that are unique to mobile. And those include having development actually be more close to the testing process. They have to deal with the fact that the release velocity for applications and new services and APIs is accelerating, and that the feedback loop needs to be continuous. You have big distributed teams that are trying to accommodate testing and quality programs, perhaps globally, and that represents challenges in terms of maintaining consistency and collaboration in an efficient way. And of course, as I mentioned before, the device fragmentation, but more importantly, the operating system and operating environment fragmentation and the imposed change that comes to you as a function of Apple and Google's determination to release new environments. Those represent massive regression events, and that's a big challenge when trying to maintain quality. And so at Keynote, what we believe is that regardless of whether or not you're developing for a mobile device, be it a smartphone or a watch like the Apple Watch, or a set-top TV, perhaps a connected device like an internet TV, testing in the cloud allows you the ability to manage a lot of the challenges that we just talked about. One of the advantages of testing in the cloud is that it really enables this notion of remote collaboration, right, with distributed teams. Managing the devices and managing the change that gets imposed, whether it's via hardware or software, is also much easier when you're managing through the cloud. Ensuring that you have good collaboration and, more importantly, the consistency of results with regard to testing because of the standardization that can be imposed within the context of a cloud-based delivery system. And then also the flexibility to test virtually anything through a managed environment and a managed service. And lastly, the ability to incorporate automation with your testing so that it's not just pure exploratory testing, but can also be scripted in ways that help you to accommodate, especially for things like regressions on specific modules that may need to be validated as a function of new OS changes. So at Keynote, we think that in terms of functional testing, both manual and automated, testing in the cloud, of course, for those advantages is the way to go. And we provide a solution and a platform that allows you to do just that. It's efficient, it's managed, and it's very robust in its capabilities that deliver you the capability to have remote control over devices in the context of a testing environment that's open and extensible and integrated with the rest of your testing frameworks. And so for this environment allows you to take advantage of new opportunities as they emerge, such as the wearable opportunity. I think probably one of the things that I'd like to do at this juncture is to provide you with a bit of a demonstration just to give you a sense of how the Keynote platform works and how you can take advantage of remote testing. So I will log into our system. And I'm on a Wi-Fi connection here in Florida at the conference. So hopefully this is going to work, although the latency hopefully won't be too noticeable. Okay, so this is the testing environment. So as you can see, there are a number of devices that are basically enabled for you at your service. And I'm just going to go to some devices that I have kind of pre-allocated to myself here. And those include basically this the Samsung Galaxy device, which I will acquire through the system, which apparently has some known issues. And as well a Samsung Gear. And hopefully you can see these. This is the watch. All right. Looks like we're good. And with these devices then, I can control them by interacting through my web client here. And you'll see that I can touch the device. I can invoke applications on it. I can bring up new applications like, I don't know, the Google Hangouts application, for example. And can basically control the device in its entirety. So what I wanted to demonstrate to you was, and that also includes the Gear watch that we have paired. So I thought I'd show you just kind of roughly how this all interacts together. And you can control multiple devices at the same time. So you can do some pretty interesting exploratory testing, for example. Here I've just acquired another device, a Note, and I'm in the Google Hangouts application, and I'll send a message. And I've got this message basically right now. I'm looking at sending a message to the other Samsung Galaxy phone. And I'll just do a message here by typing on the keyboard of the phone and send this over to my friend on the other side over here. And as you can see, the other device, I'm going to go minimize this. You can see on the other device here, I sent a message to this phone saying goodbye in Google Hangouts, and that message showed up here on my watch. I have to go into my messages. Notifications. Here we go. So you can see that the capability of the platform allows me to basically do all of the things that I'd like to do in terms of testing this phone. And the nice thing about it, too, is that it allows me to save my output of any given test and also to control the device remotely. So I can change the orientation, for example, rotate it back, etc. So going back to the presentation, one of the keys is with regard to testing in wearables is that it's very important, especially in the wearable context, to be able to essentially use a platform or to use a framework that allows you to support a multiple set of requirements. You need to be able to address all those challenges, and those challenges really orient around a lot of both process, organization, as well as technology. And so in terms of process and technology, blending those two, having a solution that is intuitive and allows you to just intuitively grab and orient and interact with devices like what you just saw is important, especially in the context of allowing developers more access to quality and testing applications. You don't want to necessarily burden developers with new scripting environments, with new languages, with new frameworks that they're not familiar with. So having a system that accommodates all of that in a way that is intuitive and does not require any additional education or skills development or experience or expertise is very important. Having the ability to support both automated and manual testing is very important. And having a wide range of devices within your testing environment is also very important. You want to be able to be very nimble, especially as new devices make themselves available, and new flavors of operating systems also enter into the equation. Integration with open source frameworks now is becoming more and more a requirement for customers. And so whether or not you're doing continuous integration, where you need to automate certain processes, build processes, and release processes, having a testing environment that allows you to accommodate for that, whether you're doing it today or want to do that in the future, is also a really important requirement because, again, as the testing, as the release cycles continue to compress, as the velocity of change continues to increase, taking advantage of automation, regardless of whether or not it's within the context of just running your tests in your environment or integrating those with other release or build environments like Jenkins, for example, is definitely a requirement. It's really the only way to go. And then, of course, also being able to integrate that back end to close the feedback loop with your operations environment. Once you release your applications into the wild, so to speak, and you've oriented you've essentially released that functionality and that new capability into production, you need to be able to have a closed loop mechanism in order to ensure that quality, once it's released in production, can be managed, both quality and performance. And then, of course, immediate support for new operating systems, as we said before, that becomes more and more the challenge today. And again, regardless of whether or not you are intending to initiate a wearables program and a wearables application development initiative, if you're already developing mobile applications for the iPhone, for the Android environment, you will be imposed upon with the wearable revolution. And so I thank you for your time. Hopefully this was useful to you. And at this time, I'm open for questions if there are any.
All right. So for the first question, to use this type of environment for testing various smartphones and wearables, what would this cost?
That's a great question. I do have some good news there. Keynote mobile testing, the specific, the environment that you saw that I was just demonstrating, that particular environment is actually available for use for free. We actually offer that as a nice entree into understanding and interacting with the Keynote testing platform. And so if you have any interest, I would encourage you to visit the keynote.com website and look for the mobile testing solution area and request a trial. And when you request a trial, what that will do is that it will give you free access for, I believe, 1, maybe 2 weeks to the entire library of devices that are available in the mobile testing platform for you to do exploratory interactive manual testing. And then after that time period, if at the end of the trial you decide that you want to upgrade to continue to have access to the entire library, or the entire cloud, I should say, for specific periods of time, you can simply pay a small amount, as low as $200 for access to the entire device cloud. But even if you decide that you don't want to commit in that way commercially to the Keynote platform, which I would highly encourage that you do, you can still take advantage of continued access to the platform on an unlimited basis, or I should say on a limited basis, in terms of the number of devices that you would have access to. And so basically we continue to give you access to certain Android and iOS devices, again, for free, without any commitment after you go through the process of the trial. But again, you get great value by purchasing additional access, we believe, to the broader library. But it's as low as $200.
All right, thank you very much. What percentage of overall mobile testing should be done on actual devices?
Well, that's a great question. And hopefully that was, I didn't explicitly comment on the fact that as I was remotely controlling that device, it was in fact a real device and it was not emulated in any way, shape, or form. So in terms of the amount of coverage or the percentage, I think it really depends on your program and the testing requirements that you have. We suggest that the amount of coverage needs to be a function of what, for example, you can automate versus what you need to do manually. And really, the vast majority of your testing can be done using a range of options, from pure emulated to black box to fully functional and controlled devices, real devices like the ones that we make available through the cloud. And so it's really going to kind of depend on your testing program and what your needs are. But if you think about it from a continuum basis, we wouldn't ever say that 100% of your coverage needs to be done based on having a real device. But some percentage does really need to be executed on a real device. It could be anywhere from 10% maybe to 10 to 20 to 30%.
Okay, next question. How long does it take for you to get a new device into the public cloud or a private cloud?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, we really have a range of options for the deployment of the Keynote cloud-based system. And so the cloud-based system can be deployed either through the public environment, which I actually demonstrated to you. Again, there's continuous refreshing of devices and operating systems, et cetera, within that environment. We do try to make available whenever a new operating system is released, we make that available within the day of that release, that public release, on at least a fraction of the devices. And we do that so that customers can have immediate access to the new operating system and testing on real devices with that operating system. So that happens usually within a matter of 24 to 48 hours. In terms of new devices being integrated into the system, again, we have a range of different options in terms of the deployment. And so sometimes that can take longer depending on the fidelity of the device integration that we're doing and the complexity of the device in terms of its integration. But usually it takes us just a matter of weeks to be able to integrate new devices.
All right, and this next question kind of looks at the future of wearables. Do you foresee wearables as having long-term staying power and popularity, or do you think this is just a brief trend that will taper off over the next few years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do believe, given the fact that Apple has entered into this space with a really game-changing device and technology, that this is not going to be just a passing phase. Wearables will absolutely become a category-changing factor in the way in which, again, digitally we interact with consumers. And so, going back to the numbers that I shared with you, $90 billion of revenue opportunity is not something that people will shy away from. And based on the early demand of the Apple Watch, again, those 1.2 million units sold over the course of basically two and a half days, the market seems to be responding. And so it's unlikely that it will be a passing phase. Now, that said, going back to the slide that I shared with regard to performance and functionality blurring, many of you may have seen or read about some of the early kind of tests, pre-release tests that some of the media outlets did with the Apple Watch. And there were some pretty harsh reviews. And really those reviews were focused around the watch's lack of performance. And so specifically, for example, one of the journalists who was interacting with the watch was trying to invoke the Uber app. And just to invoke the application itself was taking like minutes, right? And so that's obviously not usable. And adoption is going to be based on the usability of these applications. Going back to the notion of like this being the Wild West, it's going to take time. It's going to take maybe a year, maybe even 2 years for the development community to really understand and design applications that are both functional but more importantly performant on the watch. And until that happens, the adoption curve may have fits and starts and it may be stunted in a way. But they will overcome those challenges. And once that happens, you're going to see massive uptake.
All right, next question. How many users are testing on a given device? Can this affect the quality of testing using your platform?
Well, that's a really great question. When Keynote runs a cloud-based platform, right? It is a cloud, and it has certain characteristics. Unlike the Amazon cloud for compute, you can't take a single server and partition it into virtual, identities and have multiple tenants coexisting on that one device. Every device is constrained to a single user. And so that does mean that, there can be at times contention for devices. What we find is that, again, based on your testing needs, that's why we offer a range of deployment solutions. We find that the cloud, the public cloud that we offer for interactive testing tends to be fairly efficiently used. And we intentionally provide enough coverage in terms of devices, and we monitor it consistently. We have a strong operations organization that is continuously looking at how much our resources are being consumed and what kind of allocation is necessary to ensure we have proper availability for resources. And so when we see that contention begins to occur, we add new devices to accommodate for that. And so as a function of that, though, I do want to also convey that the process by which we manage these resources is all very, very specific and very intentional to ensuring that, for example, the privacy of your IP and the security of your IP when you load your applications onto these devices is ensured. And so that part of the process is all very highly managed. We intentionally eliminate any bad actors that may interdict themselves into the environment so that we ensure a very safe and a very effective environment for you to do your testing. Great. Well, I think that wraps it up. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending.